Welcome to the Feisty Women's Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Gross, Ironman champion, PhD in women's history, and founder and CEO of Feisty Media. I started this show because I wanted to cut through the BS of diet culture and fitness culture and actually learn from high-achieving women at the top of their game who have figured out how to feel and perform their best at every stage of life. So I chat with experts, elite athletes, and leaders who have learned to succeed despite the massive gender data gap in exercise and medical science and product development. Every episode is filled with information, advice, and anecdotes that will help you fulfill your potential as an athlete, mom, leader, or business owner. And listen up. If you don't subscribe to our Women's Performance newsletter, you are definitely missing out. It's totally free. So head over to womensperformance.com and subscribe now. That's womensperformance.com. This podcast is a production of Feisty Media. Hello, Feisties. My guests for this episode left me feeling incredibly inspired by the brand and the business they've built, and most of all by the incredible global community they have created. Another Mother Runner. Maybe you've heard of them? They started in 2010 with one book, and now the brand has 3 popular podcasts, shares 2 blogs per week, does social media content, hosts the Train Like a Mother Club, they sell training programs, and have an annual retreat, and more. Today, I talked to the co-founders of this community, Dimity McDowell and Sarah Bowen-Shea. Sarah and Dimity have been creating content and community for women for 20 years and have a lot to say about the gaping content holes in the running world for women and for mothers. We discuss how, ultimately, listening to each other, creating safe spaces to talk about things that aren't discussed elsewhere, and human connection are the connective tissue that keeps their community running happy. Sarah and Dimity really kept me laughing and guessing as they unpacked their experiences of engaging authentically with feisty runners over more than 2 decades. I'm sure you will enjoy this interview as much as I did. Sarah, Dimity, welcome to the Women's Performance Podcast.
Thanks for having us on, Sarah.
Yeah, excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you both here as well. Like I said before the show, I've been creeping you for several years since I started Feisty Media, and I'm very keen to hear about how you built what you've built, and also what you've learned along the way. So, Sarah, maybe we'll start with you. What did you play sports growing up?
No, I was a reader, not an athlete. I come from a very bookish family. So I love spending time outdoors, but often I would read outside in trees, but I was not out there moving around all that much. So I took up sports. I played a little tennis in high school and dabbled in running in high school, but then it was really through joining the rowing team in college that got me just absolutely devoted to being athletic and moving my body.
Wow. So you went from not playing sports as a kid to a college rowing team?
It was, at the time, it was a club sport.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and interestingly enough, Dimity ended up being on the same college team, but 6 years after I left. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Dimity, what was your sports background? Were you an athlete?
I was, but again, not an endurance athlete. Like my memories of the presidential physical fitness test are nightmares still, right? Of like that mile test in 5th grade or whenever it was, the shuttle run with the erasers. No, it's not a runner. But yes, I played tennis in high school as well. I played softball, a little bit of basketball, but not much. But I wouldn't have considered myself an athlete. But then I got to college and like Sarah said, I joined the rowing team as well. It was at Colgate University. We both went to Colgate, but it was a club team at that time. It's a varsity sport now. And both Sarah and I are really tall. I'm almost 6'4", and Sarah is what, 5'11", Sarah? And so height is really good for rowing, which I didn't know. I grew up in the Twin Cities. We didn't have rowing there. I wasn't aware of it. And so when I got to Colgate and I'm walking around campus, the crew coach like basically recruited me because I was really tall, because you get a lot of leverage on the oar when you're tall. So we both were on the crew team, like Sarah said, at different times. And I was the captain of the team my senior year. It was the 20th year of women rowing at Colgate. And so there was a banquet and Sarah came to the banquet with her then husband, who was also a Colgate grad. And I met her, and that's kind of how we started our relationship. Yeah.
That's so, okay. That was my next question. So you didn't actually meet at college, but you met at a college event?
Yes, because I'm 6 years older than Dimity is, and so I was long gone from Hamilton, New York by the time she got there. So yes, so what Dimity is leaving out is that she stood up and read a poem that she had wrote about Colgate crew that she had written, and so she literally stood out in my mind because of doing that. It was a lovely poem, and
because she was 6'4",
and because she's quite tall. So then Colgate has a very active alumni network. And so when Dimity was looking for a job in magazines, she asked the alumni office, like, hey, are there any Colgate alum in magazines? And so they were like, well, here's a list of some. And I was one of them. I worked at a magazine called Walking in Boston. And so Dimity typed me? Yes, typed, or did you handwrite that
yeah.
letter?
Oh, yeah. This was pre-email. So this was like, I mean, this is 95, 96. So yeah, I typed you. I mean, I didn't type it. I put it in a computer and printed it out, but it was not.
Oh, okay.
It was
but it was not handwritten. That was the other choice. Was it handwritten?
No.
So she wrote me a letter. And so then to my office, and then we talked on the telephone, and I helped her get an interview, and that's was Dimity's start in magazines. And so then we overlapped at different events, media events back in the boondoggle days. Nike or Adidas or somebody like that would bring various journalists to events, and so we got to hang out and I don't know, Moab or Jackson Hole or wherever else that was pretty swanky, and get to mountain bike and hike and run and all that stuff. So we became friends that way.
Right. So you sort of met through journalism rather than through sport or running. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly. Yeah. And I have to say, Sarah's, she's leaving out the first job that she helped me get was at Women's Sports and Fitness magazine, Sarah. I don't know if you were aware of that, but like it was back when it was started by Billie Jean King, way back in the day. And I used to like crave that magazine. That's the wrong verb, but I would like go to Barnes and Noble and buy it off the shelf because I liked it so much. It was hard to find. It was not, Women's Day or whatever. So it's not around anymore like most magazines, but it was like the first, I feel like the first women's sports magazine that actually like took women's sports seriously.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I actually did a little bit of research about women's sports, that magazine. So
yeah.
And how, like, back in the day, like when they first tried to cover women's sports and when Billie Jean King was like kind of all over that, there wasn't the audience to have an entire magazine dedicated to women's sports, but it ended up just going more and more down this like fitness train of like,
yes.
But people would buy, like, how do I get, like, it was the 90s, right? Like, how do I get skinnier,
Yes.
or
get a
whatever.
better Yep.
Yeah. And so like, then it eventually I think got, bought and like kind of brought into Self magazine. I think it was
it was bought by Condé Nast. Yes. And so they own like Vogue and Glamour and all the, GQ, all the kind of really slick magazines. And it definitely got a better butt makeover. I mean, I also worked at Sports Illustrated for Women, which was like around for like a year or maybe 18, maybe a little bit longer than that, maybe 2 years. But it is a very hard sell It's gotten a ton better, and I'm so excited about where we are right now with women's soccer, women's basketball. There's a new women's volleyball league starting, but getting women's sports to have the attention and have the readership and the excitement around it and the coverage, right? It's just it. I mean, I feel like it should be solved at this point. But I feel like I've had a front row seat to trying to fix parts of that, right? I know people are really much more devoted to it than I am, but it's one of those things where it is a hard puzzle to solve.
Yeah, and that's why like I was kind of looking into it because it's so interesting to me that it feels like Billie Jean King with those types of projects and all the people who worked on that stuff, they were just ahead of their time, right?
Yes,
And now we have this interest in women's sports, right? And also in women's health in different ways, not just the get a better butt situation.
Yes.
Are there some differences that you've noticed like the last few years?
Mm. Hmm. I mean, the only thing that springs to my mind is that Instagram makes back front and center better butt and, I don't know, more contoured face. And I don't know, sometimes that health and wellness can kind of become I don't know, just an enticement on Instagram that doesn't really, or other forms of social media that doesn't really have to do with health and longevity and wellness and self-fulfillment and things like that. So that's kind of a negative attitude, which wasn't what you were looking for.
That's okay. No, I love it because I sometimes live in this world of optimism, and it's like that's also very true. Yeah.
I mean, I would say the one thing that Instagram and other things I've brought out is people, yes, certainly we present ourselves and like we take 17 videos to put out the best one, right? So it's not that realistic, but it is realistic in that people are talking more about different things. They're talking more candidly about depression or body image issues or, menopause or all those things that used to be, literally last night I was sitting with my husband after dinner and I was talking about how it's so hard for me to get up in the morning now. Like I never was like, well, I've always been an early bird, but like literally getting out of bed, like it's not just my head that I don't want to get out of bed. It's that I just have this like lethargy on me. I'm 51, I'm going through perimenopause and he's like, it's so interesting that that's coming around now. And I'm like, it's always been there, Grant. It's just that people never talked about it before, like it's that women maybe were talking about it with themselves, but now menopause is on the New York, the Sunday magazine and the New York Times, so now men actually know more about it. So I would say that is one thing that I've seen that's different. But unfortunately, like the beauty standards, again, that's like I think that's a rock we're going to keep pushing uphill for a while. But I like that we're keeping it moving, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's go. I really want to hear about your story about how you created another mother runner, what need you saw that you were sort of filling. How did you start? You were working together on media projects. You were both writers.
Yeah. So I had, we both had children. Sarah has an older daughter and then boy-girl twins. And I have an older daughter and I was pregnant with my second kid who is a boy. And I had some postpartum depression after I had my first kid. And I was like, okay, I do not want to do that again. That was not a very pleasant way to experience being a mom. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to need a goal. I'm going to run a marathon after I have kid number 2. And
start small, just
exactly. And so I was like, who can I ask that is not going to say no? Because if I asked a friend that was kind of like, are you sure that's a good idea? I would have probably been like, you're right. I shouldn't do that. I should aim for a 10K or a 5K. So Sarah came to mind because again, we'd gone on these adventures and I kind of knew that she had an adventurous spirit. So long story short, we ended up running the Nike Women's Marathon together, which it's not around anymore, but it was in San Francisco. We ran it in 2007. My kids were, I think like 1 and 4, 1 and 3-ish. Sarah and yours were a little bit older. Is that right?
5 and 2 or 2.5. Yeah.
Yeah. And we wrote about it for Runner's World. And we wrote a feature called The Marathon Moms. And we kind of wrote about it. And at that point, it felt like running was still very much like a split sport, go to the track, like track your heart rate kind of thing, like very much for like elite people, or at least in my mind, that's what it felt like. And we came at running like, oh my gosh, I need this endorphin high. I need to beat depression. I want to lose some baby weight. I want to listen to like something that isn't Baby Beluga. I want to spend some time with my friends, because I don't see them anymore. So we get up first thing in the morning and laugh together. And so, yes, we've always thought that the time on the clock matters. It would be a lie to say it doesn't, but we came at running from like a lot of different angles and not just like how fast can you go, but what else can it bring to your life? And that's what the crux of the magazine article was, and that turned into the book, Run Like a Mother, how to get moving and not lose your family, job, or sanity. And that came out in 2010. And again, we kind of really like crowdsourced that, made it kind of a communal effort, like asking different questions and stuff in that. And like having, like the question would be like, I don't know, what do you eat before a run? Or probably there was a better question than that. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but, but they were like 10 great answers, right? From people. And we would see like Sarah in Canada said this, and so it already brought in this feeling of like a team, like a kind of camaraderie, and that we were all just kind of moving forward together.
Cool.
Yeah.
And did you see it as a community first?
I have to say that Dimity is a visionary. That Dimity is from the Midwest, and so Dimity, and I say that with love in my heart because Dimity thinks about other people before she thinks about herself. And so from the get-go, when we started promoting this bright yellow book at race expos, being two incredibly tall women, she was like, Sarah, this is going to be about other people. This isn't about us. This is about, and Dim used the word community way before it was a buzzword in marketing and all that stuff and social media. And so from day one, it was about Another Mother Runner, which we named after about a year of being around, was about community, about the other people, and about uniting people, because what we see is that running, like motherhood, can be very isolating and done in isolation. And so, I live in Portland, Oregon, so I can look out my dining room window and see people running by the house. There's a whole lot of runners here. But if you live in rural Nebraska, if you live in, I don't know, a small town in Alabama, something like that, you are maybe not going to see other runners. Or when you drop your kid off at preschool, you're not going to meet other women who are standing there in their capris and sports bra and a little zip up tank type thing. And so that we wanted to let all those women know that there were other people very similar to them with the same interests, the same goals, the same desires, and to give them all a gentle nudge out the door and remind them to put themselves first on their to-do list at least once a day.
Right. And why would the content created for runners generally, like the things written for runners generally, or the runners podcast, like why did that not speak to mothers specifically? Like, what do you feel like was missing that these people needed to connect or needed something different?
I mean, I've never stood on a running podium in my life, ever, at a race. I mean, we say we lead from the middle of the pack, and now I would say we lead from the back of the pack, Sarah. I mean, so it wasn't necessarily that like those weren't speaking to me. It was just like performance matters, right? I'm not going to lie. Like I like, I set some goals for myself. Like I wanted to beat, 150 and a half marathon. I didn't ever do it, but that was like one of my goals, right? I wanted to go under 4 in a marathon. I never did that either. But like I had those kind of in the back of my head, but I held them loosely in the idea that running just brought so much more to my life. And again, at the time, it just felt so performance oriented. And I mean, talk to a mom who, and all women, I mean, we definitely, obviously mother is in the name of our brand, but I do think that we can talk to, women. We do talk to women that are, dog moms or don't have any kids or pets, because we're all busy and we all have a lifestyle that isn't necessarily conducive to taking time for yourself and setting goals. But if you go back and you think to this like woman who, maybe has a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, which is again kind of where we started, like, I am so tired. I am so like feeling wrung out already. I'm like subsisting on like, leftover chicken nuggets. And I'm not, if I go out and say, if I don't hit these splits, which is again what I felt like what running was like, if I don't hit, my 9:30 splits or whatever I want for my run, that's going to be a failure. Like, no, like I got out. My gosh, I moved my body. I beat the forces that were pulling me to the couch. And I mean, it sounds so different because social media is so pervasive now, but back in 2010, 2011, it didn't feel that way. It really felt like it was like the realm of people who were very serious about the sport, and we're serious enough, but we're not too serious, I guess.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Totally does. And Sarah, here's what I'm wondering. So I had my daughter actually in 2010.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
And at the time I remember, and I was a pro triathlete, and I remember literally the information I had about coming back from pregnancy was like from blogs of other elite athletes who had
Mhm.
done it. Like there was
Yeah.
not, it was not like go find the scientific research or the articles about this or the book about it, you know?
Mhm.
Did you did you at any point did you talk about like the science side of women's specific like
Mhm.
the women's specific needs, or was that just not a thing? Was it more just about like community and recognizing each other, almost like recognizing that you had different needs to other runners and knowing each other in the community?
Yeah, so I would have to say, going back to our Colgate education, our well-rounded liberal arts education, we are not heavy on the science. I mean, Dimity is a certified running coach, certified strength coach, so she has the chops for all of that, but we don't present ourselves to, be the next Stacy Sims.
Mm-hmm.
And so and have a, stack of research next to us that we understand completely. But we do, as journalists, we have talked to far more than our fair share of experts. I mean, we both wrote for Fit Pregnancy and Shape and Self and Health and all those women's magazines. And so that we talk to, people at the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and all those sorts of things. So we know, we have a breadth of knowledge that then we can impart. But for us, it's really kind of about um, informing, entertaining, educating, and encouraging, and just keeping people moving forward. And like I said, putting yourself first on your to-do list. And yeah. So yeah, but I mean, I know that, back when we started in 2010, it was tough to even find doctors who would give you very cutting edge information.
Tell you to run during pregnancy. Yeah, even. I
Yeah,
mean,
it was about
yeah.
like, oh, keep your heart rate under such and such. There was,
Yeah.
it was just all very um by the book, and didn't really have a grasp of, well, if the woman's already doing this, then it's not going to be a big shock to her system to keep doing it when she's growing a baby that still, at this point is only, couple inches long. Like it's not going to knock her over to go out and put in some miles.
Yeah, that's definitely was what I was told. It's like to continue doing what I'm doing. Basically, it was left on me. Like nobody gives you any advice. It's like you
Yeah.
decide.
Thanks, Doc. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And so in terms of like the evolution of Another Mother Runner, like you start your writing, you write this book. Eventually there's another book,
There's
right?
2 more books. Yeah.
Two more
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
You have a podcast, you start a podcast at some point, and then I'm guessing you have like communities
So
in
so
different
yeah,
places.
so Dimity and I, it was about community, but we didn't set out to start a brand. And so it just grew very organically. Yet another word that we really didn't know was a buzzword in the marketing world. And so that we see Another Mother Runner as a tree with many branches, and just a 1 year would pass and another branch would be on the tree. And so it was the podcast in 2011. It was our training program, Train Like a Mother Club, after our second book, Train Like a Mother, came out. And we got marketing partnerships. We had online merchandise. Again, going back to, we were at those expos and people would be intimidating to come up to us to Amazons and buy a book from us. And so just we kind of layered all these supportive, entertaining, educating things on top of each other. But I mean, a lot of our success came from social media, from our community there. By and large, Another Mother Runner is online. We do have a few in-person touch points, if you want to say that. We have a retreat. We had our first retreat, running retreat in 2015. Dimity leads programs. Last year launched a program called Better Together, so that people train in their respective, towns, and then convene on one place to do a marathon or a shorter race. Last year was Indianapolis. This year it's going to be Richmond. And then we go to race expos. Occasionally we do podcast recording parties, sometimes in person, but we do not have in person, meet at Saturday at 10 a.m. at this corner or this coffee shop and go for a run together. That is just a level of coordination and details that would need a much larger back office than we have. Let's say that. Yeah. How's our back office looking these days, Dimity?
So that totally makes sense. And I'm going to ask a question that people always ask me, but just kind of like they always ask me, like, how do I make my money? So Dimity, it sounds like, you have training programs that you sell. You have,
exactly.
You have some media partners,
Yeah. So the training programs, we have marketing partners. Yep. So we, promote a brand or a product that we really like. And one of the things, I'm just backing up for 1 second, Sarah, like all the things that we've done, like have been organic. It's mostly stuff that we just felt like we wanted in our lives, so it's not like we had a business plan to be like, oh, we're going to head into podcasts now. I mean, so it's just been one of those things like, oh, what we would like to hear some women chatting on, so again, 2011 it was a little bit different than the saturation of the market now. So anyway, so podcast revenue, marketing partner revenue, training plans. We also have merchandise, like Sarah mentioned. Those kind of the four main.
Well, in our Many Happy Miles.
Well, that's the training program.
Yeah. So that's but it's an annual membership versus, our Train Like a Mother Club is if you're, want to run a half marathon, a 5K, an Ironman, do a nutrition program, but then there's Many Happy Miles, which Dimity geniusly oversees, and it's a workout every single day. It lasts for a year. Dimity could talk more about that with more information.
Yeah. And so here's my question. What has surprised you the most?
Even though we set out to make it about community, like it never was like, okay, we're like going to grow by this many or do this many. But what is so fun and what has been the most rewarding from my perspective anyway, is just seeing the connections that people make. Often at retreats, we'll stand up and be like, a lot of people come by themselves and we'll say, when you leave, you're going to have 40 new friends. And, it's probably true of a lot of retreats, but, then they're going off and doing Ragnar together, or they're going off and doing something else fun together. And, when they come back and just the strength of the community, there are times when, in one of the private Facebook pages, someone will put up something that isn't running related and they're having some kind of, small crisis in their life, and people just jump in like they're their next door neighbor, or like they went to high school together. And that is just, that just gives me the chills when I see that, because I just know that it's just like, it is a very solid friendship connection, and it's something that people can rely on. And with the epidemic of loneliness and all the other stuff going on in the world these days, I just really know I like that we're kind of like a soft place to land, and people know that they're going to come in and be supported.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say building on that. I mean, that was definitely the first thing that sprung to my mind, and what Dimity alluded to is one thing was we did a few Ragnars. We kind of fielded a team of people. It was a contest to be on a Ragnar team with us. We did one in Napa Valley and one in Maryland. And we're coming up on this summer is the 10-year anniversary of the Napa Valley one. And they're having a reunion of it. Like they've got the Airbnb all picked out, Dimity and I are invited. I'm seriously considering going. And I mean, those people are on Marco Polos where they are communicating several times a day. And I mean, that's over a decade with people that they spent, 2-3 days with, and that they're just so important in each other's lives.
Building muscle can be tough, and gains can be so slow, even for those of us who do a lot of strength training. As an ex-endurance athlete who is now in perimenopause, I know this all too well. It can be frustrating to put in the time in the gym and not see the results I'm looking for. That's why it's super important to take the right supplements at the right time. One of those supplements is essential amino acids, which are needed to trigger muscle protein synthesis. Muscle protein synthesis happens when you eat high-quality protein, like eggs or whey. And by supplementing with additional essential amino acids, you can make sure you are getting the full benefit of your training sessions. Targeted essential amino acid formulas can be up to 4 times more effective than just eating protein. I've been taking amino acids for almost a year, and in combination with eating quality protein and a couple other supplements, I have managed to turn the tides on age-related muscle loss, which starts at 30 for women, by the way, and I have continued to make strength gains as I head towards 50. AminoCo has been a long-time sponsor of Feisty Media and has supported all of our brands and podcasts over the years. I recommend starting with AminoCo Perform, and you can grab some at aminoco.com/performance. If you enter the code PERFORMANCE, you will save 30% and receive a free gift if it is your first purchase. Give it a try and let me know how it goes. That's aminoco.com/performance and use the code PERFORMANCE to save 30%. For decades, running shoes have been researched, tested, and designed for men. Brands have relied on the shrink it and pink it approach to sell male shoes to female customers. That's why we are so excited to be working with Hedas. Hedas designs athletic footwear for women that elevates performance, safety, and style. Hedas unlocks the science behind women's biomechanics through dedicated research, creates better shoes for women that support their longevity and performance, and establishes new design standards to promote transparency in a male-biased industry. Hedas have a lower ankle collar to reduce rubbing, a breathable mesh toe box to allow for ventilation and to allow for female toe shape, a special kind of plate in the midsole to keep tired legs going, a narrow heel cup to reduce heel slippage and take the pressure off our Achilles, and a rounded instep to create a snug fit. Hedas has 3 shoe models designed for different sessions: the Alma Cruise for long runs, the Alma Tempo for training days, and the Alma Speed for pushing the pace. I've personally been running in the Alma Cruise and I love them. It's the shoe I always wanted and never knew I needed. The fit is perfect in every way. You can get your own pair of Hedas at hedas.com and use the code Feisty20 for 20% off. That's Feisty20 at hedas.com, and it will all be in the show notes. As we head into summer, rest and recovery are critical for improving sports performance, reducing stress, and living a long and healthy life. We should all invest in better sleep. So, think about the thing you lay your head on for 8 hours a night. If it's not exactly right for you, it can lead to needless tossing and turning, or worse, have you waking up with an unrelenting kink in your neck. My new Lagoon pillow has helped me improve my sleep immensely by pairing me with the performance pillow that has everything I need. So I personally was matched with the Otter pillow. Shout out to Team Otter, which I love because it has a gentle cooling effect. And I was able to choose how much stuffing I wanted in it, which is super important to me because I'm doing a decent amount of CrossFit these days and my shoulders are kind of creaky. So having a pillow that is stuffed just to the right height keeps my neck and head in exactly the right position and comfortable for the entire night. And as of fall 2023, Lagoon launched their 100% mulberry silk pillowcases. It's cool to the touch, buttery soft, and great for your skin and hair. You've got to go check out this pillowcase if you want to feel great and look great every morning. Waking up for morning workouts has never felt better. I'm refreshed and pain-free thanks to my Lagoon pillow. To check it out for yourself, go to lagoonsleep.com/performance and take the 2-minute sleep quiz to find your perfect pillow match. And then use the code PERFORMANCE for 15% off your first purchase. That's code PERFORMANCE at lagoonsleep.com/performance, whole 15% off, and the link is in the show notes. You can just click through there.
I definitely, and we've touched on this a little bit, but I want to flesh this out a bit more. Like, I know that we're entering a new era for women's sports. It seems like more money is being invested. And I'm just wondering, like, from the time that you first started kind of writing about women's running. What has changed for mothers and for women who run since then until now? What are the main changes that you've seen?
One thing that springs to my mind is that mothers are still competing on a very high professional level. And so that it doesn't mean that it's the end of their career when they decide to take the mother off ramp. It's not an off ramp. It's just a way station along their journey. And so that, whether it's Shalane Flanagan adopting kids, or Kara having her son, whatever it is, that then they can jump back into their career and continue pursuing it. And if it's not a professional career, they can continue striving for PRs, wanting to stand on that podium and really still reaching those goals. So motherhood doesn't mean the end of your athletic superiority.
Yeah, that's a great one. I remember when Paula Radcliffe and Kara Goucher were kind of like these, I don't know, pioneers in the space. It was like they're doing track workouts while they're pregnant. And now we know it's okay.
Yeah.
A lot of athletes moving through that phase, like you say. Dimity, did you have other things?
I was just going to say, it's similar. I think acceptance, I think the society as a whole, it might not be there, but when we see somebody running an ultra and taking a breastfeeding break, and that's celebrated on social media, that might not, again, trickle down to everybody yet, but it's going to get there. Right. And so it's just this idea that you can, I don't want to say do it all because you can't do it all, but you can selectively pick what you want to go for. And kids can, not necessarily hold you back from doing that, and that's, it's hard. That's the other thing too, though. Sometimes I see those pictures of someone nursing a child at mile 66 of an ultra, and you're just like, my God, I couldn't even, get to mile 33 and I'm not, and I'm not pregnant. I don't have an infant or whatever. So, there is that, that little bit of that superwoman bit to it. Sometimes I think that can bring in that, comparison element, but the fact that it's even there, I think is a big picture thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also thinking just about for the average woman runner too, has the zeitgeist kind of in the way that we talk about someone who's a mother and runs, has that shifted in particular since you first started writing about it until 2024?
I guess, I don't know if I don't know. I don't mean for this to sound cantankerous or me being dough-headed, but that yes, the name of our brand is Another Mother Runner, but I guess I sometimes see our people as runners first and foremost, and then maybe the mother part enters in. That we very much have always, another one of Dimity's credos was always, we are talking to the moms. So we are not telling them how to help their kids get, enter their first 5K, that type of thing. So that I guess we just see them as women, and whatever else they do in the rest of their time, it makes them busy. It makes them tired. It makes them feel like they maybe need to put a solid check on their to-do list. But that, I don't know, I've never first and foremost defined myself as a mom. And so that's not how I define the women in our audience either. I don't know.
So what I was wondering really is if the messaging that we get, so for example, if you two were writing for running magazines, right? Was kind of the way that we talked about women and running together, was it different 20 years ago to now?
Talking about running specifically, I don't think so. Just because I think, like Sarah said, I think you think of runners. If I were to have an assignment for Runner's World magazine right now, I would just think of it as this person as a runner, whether they're male or female. They want to. So as runners, no, but I do think that there's those shades of, now that we know what happens when your period, when you're on your period, what happens with your performance. That's something that, if I was writing for women runners, I would bring that into my consciousness if it made sense to bring it up in the article. Or again, thinking about stuff like perimenopause, or even depression or thyroid issues, or stuff that comes up again more frequently with women now because we're more aware of stuff. you know, that feels like I could potentially, it could be part of the discussion instead of just focusing solely on performance.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we're looking to, you know, increase your stride length, no. But if we're looking to, you know, maximize a 6-month training schedule, yes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I do, when I mentioned earlier about how we were kind of able to leverage social media channels to our advantage, which would not be able to do these days because, you know, big tech owns us all and they're driving the ship. And one way that we really grew our Facebook community was through something called TMI Tuesday. So the first post every Tuesday morning was a topic that people would have deemed taboo back when we started. People were not talking about, I'm going to have my period on race day. What am I going to do? I bled through my capris. You know, what should I be doing? I'm thinking about getting an IUD. Will it sideline me for my running or something like that? And so that us talking about that and bringing those things out into the open was far more, no, I don't want to say shocking or scandalous because those are way too strong words, but it was more surprising. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And because also then people would be like, oh, well, gosh, my friend Allison commented on that Another Mother Runner thing, talking about, you know, how she, you know, handles breastfeeding with training. Maybe I want to go over there and see what they're talking about. So we did leverage that part of the conversation, to help our community, to have our community have a greater reach, and to really speak to women and let them know that they, like Dimity said, this is a safe place to land, and that we can talk about anything. As we often say, nothing's too basic or too much information. One thing that has really surprised me over the years with Another Mother Runner is how our community, both in its essence and in its actuality, has remained so positive and so supportive that, as I said, Another Mother Runner is largely online. And as the years have tracked forward, you know, social media and online life gets far more ugly, far more contentious. And yet somehow Another Mother Runner has been able to maintain just this supportive, positive vibe. And it just feels really special. And the few times that we have things have veered even the tiniest toward negativity, people from the community, before we can even get on there to moderate things, which we don't do, you know, we don't steer the conversation with too heavy of a hand, people would jump in and support us and say, well, I don't think Sarah meant that. Or, you know, that just amazingly that I don't know, that I think everybody in the community knows how special it is and feels how special it is and wants to maintain that and wants to help in any way they can to maintain that. So that's been really very life affirming. And that might sound a little maudlin to say that, but I mean that sincerely, that the sanctity and the safety of our space is important to us, and it's important to our community members.
I love that you've been able to maintain that as you've grown, you know, because one of the things I've noticed is that, like, we have in Feisty, we have a few different communities, and in those communities, especially on Facebook, there tends to be this core group that started out positive, and as it grows, it can get a little bit unruly, you know?
Yeah.
And then we have to make this, like, no assholes rule, we call it. Like, we literally, you know, when you sign up for the page and they can send you, like, you're not allowed in unless you agree not to be an asshole, and we tell you what that means, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we rarely have to, there's maybe been a couple people that we've had to boot out, but
yeah, we have a kind of a group of ambassadors which know this rule. We were very direct when we tell them, and other people who are part of the community, they may or may not, but we pretty much like don't allow conversations about politics or religion, just because that's just, you know, that's everywhere else. If you need to go talk about those kinds of things, like, absolutely, we understand they're at the forefront of a lot of important things in our lives right now. But this is a space to talk about your running, about you moving forward, about, you know, anything else going on as far as your healthy athletic being. But so it's nice. I mean, that kind of weeds out a lot of the asshole situations, just because you're not going to disagree on that. You know, it's not allowed.
Yeah, for sure. Is there in your groups, do you find there's I don't know what to say, there's a large amount of talk about weight loss, or has that not been the case for you all?
It's funny. I'm in a couple other women's like active groups, and weight loss is definitely a focus. We have a couple nutrition programs where we have private Facebook pages for that, and that is obviously comes up in discussion. It doesn't come up as much as you would think it would and around another mother runner. And I think that's really because we lead from the back of the pack. We're not looking, really with Many Happy Miles, that membership program, like our whole thing is just keep moving forward. Whatever it looks like for you, just keep moving forward. And, I stopped running myself in it's 2000. I should have stopped a couple years before that, but didn't quite have it.
But
in me
not
to do it.
2000. Not 2000.
2020. I'm sorry, 2020. Had a couple twos and zeros in there. 2020. And doing that and stopping running, I mean, that was a big leap for me. But I was like, you know what? My body hurts so much. I can't do this anymore and pretend like it's all okay. Right. And so like I've become a hiker. I ride my bike a lot more. And I think me doing that, not that people needed permission to stop running, but it's kind of been like, okay, you know what? You can move forward in different ways. And with that, our bodies are going to change shape. It's just life, it's aging. So, I mean, Sarah and I don't talk much about weight loss ourselves. I mean, at all, actually. So we really try to just focus on because fitness and skinny are two different things, or fitness and what we consider like to be socially acceptable can sometimes be two different things. So we're more on the fitness side of things.
Yeah, I love that. And the reason I asked is because that's the kind of, it's like in our feisty communities, we really want to get away from, like, we only talk about body image in the way of talking about all the ways that we've been negatively affected by cultural messaging and what that is and how that works. But really, we want to get away from that, like, weight loss focus and more into like acceptance and loving our bodies. So I was just wondering if that's something that had come up.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
I was going to say last week on the Friday podcast, the Another Mother Runner podcast, we had an intuitive eating registered dietitian, and she weaves mindfulness into her practice. And that episode really seemed to resonate with a lot of people. And so we kind of approach weight and weight maintenance or those types of topics from some different angles and not just weight loss. I mean, you hear NPR and you think that, Ozempic is, I don't know, in public water systems these days or something like that. And it's not a topic that really comes up in our audience. So, yeah.
That's great. And that speaks to the environment you've created. So, yeah.
That's nice of you to say that.
As a lifelong runner and triathlete turned CrossFitter, I am stoked to announce that the athletic eyewear brand Tifosi Optics has joined us as a partner here at Feisty Media. Tifosi sports glasses hit all the marks for athletes. They're shatterproof polybicarbonate, so the lenses not only reduce glare, but also offer scratch resistance, which I 100% need. They stay in place when you are moving. The hydrophilic rubber nose pads actually get more grippy the more you sweat, so they are secure and don't slide down your face even when you're running in hot conditions. No matter what sport you do, Tifosi has shades for you. Whether you love tennis, fishing, pickleball, running, cycling, or just hanging out on the beach. They are super reasonably priced, which I love, so I can have multiple pairs that go with any outfit. And of course, Feisty listeners get a special discount. So, head on over to tifosioptics.com and use the code FM20. FM as in Feisty Media to get 20% off your order. That's FM20 at tifosioptics.com. I'll put a link in the show notes to make it easy for you. Endurance sports should be accessible to everyone, right? That's why we are so excited to be partnering with Motive. Motive is one of the fastest growing training apps in the world today, with thousands of amateur athletes signing up every month and a nearly perfect 4.9 star rating in the App Store. You are not a template, and your training plan should not be either. prepare for running races, triathlons, cycling events, duathlons, or swim runs, however your season schedule shapes up, and get training written by some of the best coaches in the world in each discipline who know what it takes to help amateur athletes reach their goal on race day. The app takes the training written by those experts and then creates the most optimal training plan for your schedule, abilities, and goals. Plus, the training is fully customized to your race schedule, how much you can train each week, your current abilities, and the goals you want to achieve in your race. You can use the app for free as long as you want, or get all the upgraded features from the app for just $19.99 a month. But as a Feisty listener, you can sign up at mymotive.com and use the code Feisty for 2 months of full premium access. That's right, you get 2 months of premium for free. So you quite literally have nothing to lose. So head over to mymotive.com, mymotiv.com, and use the code Feisty, Feisty. And on a personal note, I know the founder of Motive, and he is driven to make triathlon and all endurance sports more accessible for the athletes who care about their performance, but who aren't quite ready for a full-time personal coach. If that sounds like you, definitely try the app for 2 months for free. You literally have nothing to lose.
Okay, so what is next for Another Mother Runner? I know you said you never set out to build a brand or to do this, but do you have plans for the future?
One thing we're looking to do, I mean, Dimity and I, we traveled so much in the early days of Another Mother Runner. I mean, can't tell you the number of hotel rooms that Dimity and I have shared and watched, Love It or Listed and International House Hunters, and always pick the wrong pied-à-terre that they would buy. So we traveled a lot when our kids were younger. And then I think we both realized that was, I'll speak for myself, it was taking a toll on my family life and the time I was able to spend with my family. So we both, kind of tapered that back some. And so then, but now Dimity and I are both pursuing some programs with Another Mother Runner that involve being back on the road somewhat more. And I'll let Dimity talk about a couple of those, but that I'm going to do a couple on the road podcast recording parties this year, which we haven't done very much. I mean, one off, we'd go down to, we're longtime partners with Goo Energy Labs. And so we would go, I'd get to go to, twist my arm. I get to go to Berkeley every year to record a podcast there. But so going to a couple different places because we really did grow AMR from, brick by brick, even though it's virtual. And so that going to those places and meeting people across the country was really profoundly positive on our business and our personal growth and our enjoyment of things.
Yeah. So this year, so Sarah mentioned we did this program called Better Together last year in Indianapolis, where we paired like first time half marathoners and marathoners with like more experienced ones for kind of a mentor protege relationship. And it was really fun. I mean, it's a lot of coordination to get people to be able to be in Indianapolis in one weekend and fit the and want to run a half marathon or a marathon. But when we were done with that, one of the women was like, okay, I never want to run another race that's not like this, right? To have this feeling of like, oh my gosh, I'm surrounded by teammates. I've got my coaches there. Like, it just feels like a celebration. And I know for myself, like, I'm done going to events by myself, right? Like I did the national champion aqua bike in New York one year, and I trained hard for it. I did well at it, and I was there by myself, and like, great, like I did it, but it just didn't have any kind of sense of fulfillment for myself, So that's really what I want to concentrate on as like the head person who does most of the training program. So we're going to do a Hike Like a Mother program, again, kind of evolving into moving forward in different ways. We're going to do this. There's an event called the Mammoth March, which is a 20-mile hike. They're all around the country. And then we're going to do one in Delaware together. Or actually, it's in Maryland, but those states are so close together. I get them confused. It's in Maryland. And then we're going to do Better Together in Richmond. I love the virtual part of it. I will say the in real life part of it is where like the magic times two happens, like where those friendships form, where you make memories, and it's hard to find people that, if I were to say to any of my friends around my neighborhood here, like, you want to go hike 20 miles tomorrow? Like, no, they don't want to do that. They want to like walk their dog around the neighborhood, so to find those people that have similar interests is pretty cool. So that, and then we'll just kind of see what comes. I mean, that's the beauty of having a small business and just kind of having, dreams and ideas come to you, and you're just like, well, let's see if we can do it,
Cool.
And I was going to say, it's not quite forward motion. There's a fair bit of side to side motion, but I'm an avid pickleball player.
Oh,
And-
I forgot to mention the pickleball.
Thank you. I'll bring it up. I'll be the one. Everybody chug. Sarah's mentioned pickleball. Yeah. So I'm, looking into, we've added pickleball to some of our retreats, and I don't know, who knows, I sometimes, some of my pickleball buddies are like, oh, you need to do a podcast called, The Real Deal or something like that. So yuck. So I don't know. But as Dim said, that we're the ones driving this ship. So we get to decide where it goes, and that it's a broad enough platform so that, when Dimity became a hiker instead of a runner, a lot of people really wanted to follow in her footsteps, and she did the rim to rim Grand Canyon, and now there's a training program for the Grand Canyon rim to rim. So I think Dimity sometimes soft pedals the saying that we lead from the back of the pack. I mean, she's an incredibly fast hiker, and so a lot of people really really fast hiker, and so that people really are motivated and inspired by that. And so they want to be able to go on their own adventures. And Dimity's always great at having new adventures, whereas I'm kind of a rinse and repeat marathoner if I'm healthy enough. So.
Right. I love that. Okay. I do need to ask my burning pickleball question though. Because it's like, what is it about pickleball? Like, why is it growing exponentially seemingly right now?
Because it's so easy to pick up. You can really learn if you had, particularly if you had a tennis or ping pong background. I mean, so many ping pong players out there, but if you have a racket sport background, you can be playing somewhat well in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It doesn't take up much space, but I think the main thing is the talk about community. My gosh, it is an amazing way to make friends and to cross over. I mean, there are just no barriers for, my good running friend Molly showed up one day. I met her at the pickleball court. She picked me up because we were going to go swimming together afterwards. And she just looked at me and she's like, oh my gosh, you have made friends with the most random people. And she was so envious of it, I travel across state lines. I oftentimes play in Washington State. And so that, I know that those people are voting for somebody different than I am. And yet there we are yucking it up out there on the court, having such a good time. And if you look at my text thread yesterday, finally somebody I am involved in a neighborhood organization here in Portland. And finally, one of the guys from that texted me yesterday. I'm like, thank you, John. You saved my text thread today from being just all pickleball people. And I just think, who would I be friends with now if I didn't play pickleball? So it's a super social sport.
I'll add, my mom is a big pickleball player, and I play a little bit, but not, don't have the passion that Sarah has for it. But it is when you think about trying to make friends, especially later in life, like that is hard, right? Especially when your kids are older, your career is, established or whatever. So that's a really nice thing. And it's super accessible, and I'm not knocking Sarah's age or anyone's age, but it is good to keep you active and stay competitive at an older age, right? Where tennis, I know, like I used to play tennis, and I'd finish and my joints would just be like, no, thank you, I'm done, And so it's just it still hurts when I play pickleball. I won't lie. They still say no, thank you, but they don't scream it. They just say it, So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like a lot of it like circling back to community, right? Like you're
Oh,
talking about that with pickleball, but also what you've created with Another Mother Runner really is. I mean, I know it's kind of a buzzword, but it really is important, I think, in particular for women, but also for anyone to keep us active throughout our lives. So you two have done a fantastic job of creating community.
thank
You,
you.
Sarah. I would send it right back to you. I think Feisty Media is super cool, and I look forward to whenever I get a new program that you guys are doing. I'm like, I got to check it out. So
Awesome. I love it. Okay. How do people find you? How do we find your podcast or follow you on social?
Yeah, so you can go to anothermotherrunner.com. That's our website, and there's all sorts of links on there. You can subscribe to our newsletter, find those plans, many happy miles, our store, all that good stuff. On Instagram, we are at the Mother Runner. And on Facebook, that Facebook community we keep talking about, we are Another Mother Runner. So, yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you
Mhm.
both for coming on the podcast today. I've very much enjoyed talking to you both.
Really fun talking with you, Sarah. Thank you.